I've been working in the aquaculture industry for over 30 years now. It's an amazing food industry that allowed me to stay here in my hometown of St. Andrews. And today we're going to head to the St. Andrews Wharf to go out to one of our production sites, one of our fish farms, so you can see what we do in our industry and the people that make it happen.
Au Nouveau-Brunswick, la région de la baie de Fundy est un secteur propice à l'élevage des saumons en mer.
It's a place where we have space, we have opportunity to farm and grow food for people. On land, we are doing everything we can. On land, we have to have irrigation, we have erosion, other challenges there. In the oceans, we have opportunity. It's utilizing our natural resources to raise food, produce food, to feed our population globally, and aquaculture is an important piece of that. Here in Atlantic Canada, it's a very important industry, and at the end of the day, we're producing healthy seafood products for humans to eat, which is a wonderful piece to be part of.
Au large de St. Andrews, Cooke Aquaculture nous a donné accès à une de ses installations. La salmoniculture en enclos à filets ouverts a commencé il y a près de 50 ans sur la côte atlantique canadienne. 4 compagnies y exploitent plus de 200 sites. Elles y produisent 40 des saumons d'élevage du Canada, ce qui représente de 8 à 10 millions de saumons par an, dont plus de 75 sont exportés vers les États-Unis.
What we have here are cages that are filled with Atlantic salmon. And in each of these cages, we would have approximately 28,000 fish. There would be just over 400,000 salmon at this one site.
Élever autant de saumons en mer durant 18 à 24 mois demande toute une logistique.
By having specialized feed teams managing our feeding of our fish, they're able to focus on the monitors and on the behavior of the fish solely. Site workers have a lot to do to manage the farm, to keep it clean, to keep it contained and safe, to do the biosecurity and the fish health.
Chez Cooke, on explique que les cages ont été améliorées au fil des ans pour éviter les attaques de prédateurs et les évasions de saumon. Une attention particulière est aussi portée à leur santé pour prévenir les infestations de parasites comme les poux de mer.
In the saltwater, we have marine biologists that are checking on our fish frequently. We have veterinarians that visit the sites monthly. We have site crews that are watching. Dive teams are in the water several times a week to remove any dead fish on bottom. Like any farming, there will be some animals that don't make it all the way through.
De telles installations impliquent une production de déchets organiques importante, mais l'industrie dit être en mesure de les gérer.
We do not own the waters that we farm in, so picture it's like farming in a park, in a sense that you're in a public space and the scrutiny and the regulations that you have to follow are very intensive. So there will be a localized impact. We are doing everything we can to reduce that, and we are doing everything we can to find ways to have our production more efficient so that the impact is less. When it comes to the fecal matter from the fish, that is a byproduct that happens in food production. When a site empties, it has to have a minimum of 3 months fallowing time, so it gives time for nature to do some remedial cleanup. The ocean floor does remediate naturally. We also have tides that help with flushing and with dilution.
Tant en mer que sur terre, l'industrie salmonicole est un important moteur économique dans les Maritimes. Selon l'Association des pisciculteurs du Canada Atlantique, elle génère annuellement 2 milliards de dollars pour la région et elle crée de nombreux emplois.
We have to remember that the wild fishery has been in decline for a long time. We need ocean farming to substitute for those wild fishery jobs. The importance of salmon aquaculture can't be understated for these jobs. 8,000 jobs throughout the Maritimes, plus hundreds, probably over 1,000 companies indirectly employed or established because of the salmon aquaculture industry.
Dans le secteur touristique de St. Andrews, la rue principale est bordée par des dizaines de boutiques et de restaurants. Son maire est convaincu que la municipalité n'aurait pas la même vitalité sans la présence de l'industrie salmonicole.
So the entire area, including St. Andrews, does greatly benefit off having such a strong industry. If you look at employers, it's one of the largest employers in the area. Just in this little region, over 2,000 people actually are directly employed in the industry. So as much as we love St. Andrews and the fact it's a great place to visit, it's full of seasonal employment. And seasonal employment doesn't work for a lot of young families and people that are trying to make a living. You need year-round income. So really, these year-round employment opportunities, aquaculture being a big part of it, is how you actually have a sustainable and vibrant community where people can live.
De façon globale, l'aquaculture est en pleine croissance sur la planète. L'Organisation des Nations Unies pour l'alimentation et l'agriculture a évalué qu'en 2022, la production d'espèces animales issues de l'aquaculture a dépassé pour la première fois celle de la pêche de capture. Ce qui met en évidence, selon l'ONU, le potentiel du secteur pour lutter contre l'insécurité alimentaire et la malnutrition.
I think salmon farming, ocean farming overall, is important to the globe, both for food security and also for sustainable management of our oceans. Ocean farming has to happen. I think Canada is really missing out on an opportunity by not getting behind it and supporting it more than what they have to date.
In the next 50 years, humankind will consume more food than all of historical consumption by humans. So that drives me to know that we have to do more with the resources we have in order to feed our planet.
Mais l'avenir de cette industrie n'est toujours pas assuré au Canada. Comme en Colombie-Britannique, des voix se font entendre dans les Maritimes pour remettre en cause l'élevage de saumon en mer.
We're proud in what we do, just as a farmer on land is proud of what they do every day. We have regulations that we have to follow at federal, at provincial, municipal, social acceptance in what we're doing. We're trying to do our best, and we want to share with people what we're doing so that they'll understand, and hopefully they'll support us. Because at the end of the day, we are farmers too. We just happen to farm in the ocean.
I want to introduce you to what the industry calls a fish farm. But we in Nova Scotia call it an industrial fish feedlot. That's what it is.
Brian Muldoon est au combat. Il est à la tête d'une association qui s'oppose à l'agrandissement des installations de Cooke Aquaculture dans la baie de Liverpool.
I want to show you something I have. Here's a map of the proposed expansion. Currently, there's 14 nets here. They would add another 6. And then in Liverpool Bay, the mouth of the bay, you're going to have 20 pens and a barge on the Brooklyn side. And then across the bay by Mersey Point, you're going to have another 20 pens and another barge.
Si Cooke obtient le hockey des autorités provinciales, ce ne sont plus 400 000 saumons, mais près de 2 millions qui seront élevés à quelques centaines de mètres des côtes.
It's not an industry for Nova Scotia. And we have to bring this awareness to the rest of the province and educate them on what's happening here underneath the nets.
Il craint en particulier la pollution éventuellement créée par ces sites d'élevage de saumon.
There's antibiotic use, there's fish feces. You can't physically see a fish waste, and they don't manage it. It doesn't stay underneath the net, and they don't come and collect it. So where does it go? It goes where the current is, and the currents take it to the shore. And right on our license plate, Canada's Ocean Playground. People from all around the world, when they hear about Nova Scotia, they picture rocky coastline, sandy beaches, and no fish farms are in sight.
Dans sa croisade, Brian Muldoon a obtenu un large appui des citoyens de Liverpool.
We started making the signs about almost 6 years ago, and we probably have put out close to 600 signs. I have not ran into any folks that are not engaged in this fight. We don't understand why the industry and the government don't listen to us.
À quelques centaines de mètres de chez Brian Muldoon et des installations de Cooke, on retrouve une des plus belles plages du comté accessible à la population. Les élus municipaux de la région se sont alliés aux opposants pour en assurer la protection.
Salmon, and the point is, what surety can the company provide that this, which belongs to every taxpayer in Queens County, is not going to be compromised?
Anyone who sets foot on a beach like this and then thinks that we're going to turn it into an industrial site must be out of their minds.
Why should a company have the right to come in and take away people's happiness? We want this beautiful piece of ocean, land to remain intact, to let our waters remain pure. I've always said aquaculture call themselves farmers of the sea. If you are a farmer on the land, you have to treat all your waste and you have to treat all your effluent, all your extra feed. So why can you be a farmer of the sea and not have to be responsible for your waste? That's the big question.
That stuff drives me crazy because here we are being responsible farmers in the ocean. Are we perfect? No. But you ask any farmer, are you perfect? Do you have an environmental footprint? And if they said, yeah, I'm perfect, no footprint, they're lying. But I would suggest you ask a farmer that question and see if they want to give you access to a farm to take a peek.
Cooke Aquaculture nous a autorisés à accompagner une entreprise de surveillance à ses installations au large de Coffin Island, tout juste en face de chez Brian Muldoon.
People need to understand, too, that we use third-party consultants as well as regulators to do that bottom video and research and grab samples. We just don't go down with a little cup, and take a little bit of soil and say, here you go.
La loi oblige les consultants externes à transmettre les résultats de leurs analyses à leurs clients, les éleveurs de saumon, mais aussi au gouvernement provincial.
The flush is good, so normally what we'll see is just what the bottom is, and it'll either be muddy or sandy, depending on what environment we're in, or rocky. So when we're pulling that up, what I saw today was no aquaculture sediment, it was just sand like you would see at a beach almost. Sometimes you can see a little bit of feces, but it won't be over the whole grab. So it'll just be scattered with that throughout, but not a bunch of it.
It's all organic material. It's not going to be waste building up on a beach. What little bit is actually dispersing from that farm is being taken up in the environment.
À 70 km à vol d'oiseau de Liverpool, une autre ferme de la compagnie Cooke est en opération au large du parc provincial de Bayswater Beach.
In the winter of 2020, we started noticing black material on the beach that smells very strongly of sulfur, like a sewage type of smell.
And then now it's come back,
Yeah,
which fits with the normal way of a beach. So all this new sand has come in and buried what was here in terms of all the black stuff.
You can really smell it here now.
Yeah, I'm starting to smell quite a bit. It's getting much stronger.
So let's try digging right here. What we can find. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
There's a layer right here. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, there it is. Oh. Yeah, it's got that smell, all right, just like the rest of the beach.
So you think that's hydrogen sulfide we're smelling, eh?
It could be, yeah. So that's what usually comes out when you start.
Une analyse réalisée par le gouvernement de la Nouvelle-Écosse a conclu que la ferme d'élevage n'était pas à l'origine du problème. Mais cela n'a pas convaincu des citoyens comme John MacDonald, qui ont obtenu en 2023 une contre-expertise qui va dans un tout autre sens.
I worked with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, DFO, for 35 years, and I was an emeritus scientist for another 5 years after that. And my field of research was the transport and deposition of mud. So I studied mud. It's black, it's sticky, it's ugly, and when you bring it up on board, people all go, oh my God, that's a really bad one, because it smells so bad. The smell of those sediments we take from under cages is very, very similar to what we see here on this beach. What happens at an aquaculture site, we know this from all the aquaculture sites which we've studied since the mid-90s, that the sediment can accumulate, if it's low energy, can accumulate under the pens. And it can get very deep, it becomes very sticky, and it becomes anoxic. In other words, there's no oxygen and it smells like hydrogen sulfide. So my hypothesis, and it's a hypothesis based on science that primarily Fisheries and Oceans has done, suggests that this material accumulates during the summer, and then a storm comes in the fall and it moves it off the site and it comes here. The data supports that. In science, as you know, nothing is ever 100%, but I would have to say that it's in the probability of the material coming from that site just after a storm is probably in the high 90s. The question has to be asked, is there another industry that is allowed to discharge untreated wastes into the ocean? And this is an untreated waste being discharged into the ocean.
Sur la côte pacifique, l'élevage de saumon en mer n'a plus la cote pour des raisons environnementales et de contamination des saumons sauvages. Aux États-Unis, l'État de Washington vient d'interdire cette pratique à la suite d'un incident qui a permis à 250 000 saumons atlantiques de s'échapper de leur enclos. Chez nous, en Colombie-Britannique, Ottawa a aussi décidé de mettre fin à l'élevage de saumon en mer d'ici 2029. Mais dans les Maritimes, rien de tel à l'agenda. Ici, ce sont les provinces qui sont responsables de l'aquaculture.
I always said, why are we treating the Pacific Ocean differently than the Atlantic Ocean?
The working waterfront has changed, though, and people need to understand that when they move to these communities. So I would come back around and say, learn about the industry, learn about what's going on and the importance of it in your front yard.
La bataille ne fait que commencer. Brian Muldoon a trouvé des alliés tout le long de la côte atlantique en Nouvelle-Écosse.
We're part of a Healthy Bays network, which is a provincial group that is working with all communities.
It's very simple. We have to get the damn net pens out of the water.
I believe we can win this. When we get together, we really do get together and we stand up. Now we just have to make sure they listen to us.
When these fish farms first started, they were small little mom and pop operations. Now it's a concern because it's having a big impact. So the lobster fishermen will be displaced from that area. So now they have to go to another area where somebody's already fishing, maybe from the next harbor down. So now you're in conflict with your fellow fishermen, and it causes hard feelings.
They're not worried about anything, you know. We're worried about our way of life and our livelihood.
Dans une salle communautaire de Liverpool, des pêcheurs de homards et des citoyens sont venus partager leurs inquiétudes face au projet de Cooke Aquaculture d'agrandir ses installations dans la baie.
At what point is it too much salmon, too much waste, too much chemicals? You don't know what the tipping point is for this harbor until you've gone over it.
The environment would be destroyed and the lobsters would move on. They wouldn't be able to reproduce here anymore or grow to maturity.
Pour tenter de répondre à ces préoccupations, des chercheurs du Huntsman Marine Science Center au Nouveau-Brunswick s'intéressent à l'impact de l'élevage de saumon en mer sur d'autres espèces. Ils analysent entre autres les effets sur les homards d'un traitement antiparasitaire incorporé dans l'alimentation des saumons.
EMB is the short form for emamectin benzoate. It is an active pharmaceutical ingredient that is delivered to Atlantic salmon to help protect them against sea lice. And so when this works for the salmon to get rid of the sea lice on them, it also does make its way into the environment. We found that the concentrations and duration that we exposed these lobsters to, which were 30 times higher than anything that's been measured in the environment. We exposed them for 10 days to these concentrations, and it didn't adversely impact the lobsters. Some of the concern is that these compounds have a very long environmental half-life. That means they stick around. So there is a potential for concentrations to increase over time, so it's important that we're monitoring that and making sure these concentrations don't exceed some of these thresholds where we would expect to see adverse effects.
Malgré ces études et la réglementation qui encadre l'industrie, chez les pêcheurs de homards de la baie de Liverpool, la confiance n'est plus là.
When they take up these lease grounds, they're stealing the ocean bottom from the people of Canada and the users of it. They won't be able to use this waterway anymore. We're entering now where they want to put the fish farm. This would be the outer limits of it. They want to put the cages right here where we're at, which is prime lobster bottom. During the season, there'd be 40, 50, 60 traps in this area. And you consider on a daily basis, you might get 1 pound of trap. So government's pushing to have more fish farms. Fish farm industry wants more. So they'll just keep going and going and going until somebody says enough is enough. So we have to draw a line in the sand and say, now is enough.
Au bord de l'océan Atlantique, à 250 km de Liverpool, on retrouve un entrepôt rempli de homards de première qualité destinés aux marchés internationaux.
There's no question that the lobster sector within Nova Scotia and the Maritimes and all of Atlantic Canada is incredibly, incredibly important. Lobster generally, as a commodity, represents about $3 billion to the annual economy in Atlantic Canada. I'm not against salmon, I'm against net pen fish farming. They are a threat to the lobster sector. They are unsustainable in any respect.
Depuis plus de 40 ans, Stewart Lamont exporte des homards vivants partout sur la planète. L'expansion des fermes d'élevage de saumon lui fait craindre le pire pour l'avenir de son entreprise.
We're just one viral video away from ruining the lobster sector in Europe in particular, and then the rest of the world. If we had a video that shows lobster grazing around these net pens, on the fecal and the food waste around the net pens, and that went to Europe, the jig would be up, the game would be over. So that's how serious it potentially could be.
That person is assuming that under those net pens is feces and filth, and that's just not the case. Our farmers have to operate in clean waters as well because we're putting fish into that same market. So we have those same concerns.
Il n'y a pas que les pêcheurs de homards qui soient inquiets. Depuis des années, les saumons qui s'échappent des fermes d'élevage préoccupent aussi des scientifiques qui craignent pour la survie des populations de saumons sauvages, ceux qu'on nomme les rois des rivières et qui passent leur vie entre l'océan Atlantique et les cours d'eau où ils sont nés.
We come here twice a week during the salmon season, and we check for any salmon wild or enhancement, as well as aquaculture escapees that may be trying to return into the Magadavic River.
À St. George, au Nouveau-Brunswick, la Fédération du saumon atlantique supervise une passe migratoire pour les saumons.
Hi, Graham. We've got 2 Atlantic salmon in the trap today, so the next step is to figure out if these are escaped farm salmon or not.
All right, let's get some scales.
Okay. We've been monitoring this fishway in the Macadavic since 1992, and we found escapees there every single year. Some years, I think we've had a low of maybe 3 fish. One year, I think we had around 1,200 fish. It's important to know how many escapees are out there because very little has been reported by industry over the years, and this facility is a means of keeping an enumeration and an idea of what is happening on a yearly basis in terms of escapes from the cages. So we've confirmed through the scale that this is an escaped farm salmon. The next step is to remove the fish from the trap and collect biological information from the fish. It's a problem because when these fish escape, some of them find their way into freshwater river systems. As we found at this fishway today, we had 1 escapee. When they enter freshwater river systems, it's been documented that they can indeed spawn with wild salmon, and that interbreeding causes reduced genetic diversity and reduced fitness over time, which dilutes the wild stocks.
Chez Pêche et Océan Canada, à l'Institut océanographique de Bedford en Nouvelle-Écosse, le généticien Ian Bradbury est convaincu que les saumons d'élevage et les saumons sauvages ne font pas bon ménage.
The farm salmon have been selected to grow well in culture, to get big, to grow fast, and it's very different from wild salmon. Wild salmon have been selected for thousands of years by nature to exist in natural rivers under natural flow conditions, natural temperatures, natural pathogens. And when the 2 interbreed, the hybrids are expected to not do quite as well. They're not going to be as adapted to the wild environment. So what we're seeing now right across the North Atlantic is that wild salmon are declining in many places. And there's been a lot of effort going into trying to understand what's causing that. What we're seeing in Atlantic Canada, and in fact what's being seen right across the North Atlantic, is that there is evidence that introgression and hybridization with farm salmon is happening. So we know that impact is there. What's unknown is the magnitude of that effect. How much of an effect is this playing in the declines we're seeing? But given that we're able to observe interbreeding, it suggests that there is a role there.
The fact that ocean salmon farming is causing the decline in wild salmon farming drives me crazy. Because the fact is, wild salmon have been in decline for over 100 years. So first of all, like any farmer, we never want to lose an animal. Second of all, escapes over the last decade have been on the decline. There are very few escapes now. And we have a reporting system in place for those that do happen.
Dans un rapport publié en 2024 par l'Association internationale des éleveurs de saumon, on peut lire qu'en Norvège, les évasions de saumon varient autour de 0,01% ces dernières années. Et ce serait la même chose chez nous, selon l'industrie.
It's less than 1% over a 30-year period. So when you're talking tens of millions of fish that are being produced throughout Atlantic Canada, and some of those escapes that are reported are recaptured again.
Selon l'Association des pisciculteurs du Canada Atlantique, 15 004 saumons se seraient échappés de leurs installations entre 2018 et 2023.
Hi, Ellen. We've got 1 escaped farm salmon from the Macadavic fish ladder today. And we're going to be...
Ces chiffres fournis par l'industrie ne correspondent pas à ce qu'observe la Fédération du saumon atlantique.
Most of the fish that are escaping and being found in rivers are from unreported events. The reports you have there are coming from the industry, yet in some years when they even say they have 0 fish, we're still finding fish in the rivers. So their reporting is very underestimated as to what is actually happening, and that's well documented in peer-reviewed literature as well globally.
Au Nouveau-Brunswick, un projet de restauration du saumon atlantique se déroule sur la rivière Pollitt, en collaboration avec la Première Nation de Fort Foley. Le biologiste Kurt Samways y vérifie régulièrement le nombre de saumons juvéniles pour établir l'état de santé de cette population.
I'm not a geneticist, but I'm a biologist, and I understand the ability for salmon to adapt to new environments. A great question is, are they able to adapt long term? Are they able to overcome? We don't know. So if you have a river that's really healthy and has a lot of salmon in it, and you have a few aquaculture escapes coming in, well, that wild population acts as a really good buffer against that kind of introgression of domesticated genes, if you will. So it kind of acts as that buffer and helps protect that wild population. However, if you only have a few adult or a few wild salmon left in the river, well, some of these fish coming in may pose a risk to that genetic diversity.
Devant les menaces qui planent sur les saumons sauvages, des solutions sont proposées. Mais seront-elles retenues par l'industrie?
There is an opportunity to sort of improve how wild salmon and salmon aquaculture coexist. And through improved study and mitigation techniques such as sterility, these sorts of tools, I think we can come a long way.
There is a means to get things back, and that's removing the cages from the ocean and going on land. As long as the cages are in the ocean, you probably are most likely going to have escapes. If that magic bullet or magic wand could prevent escapes, then that would be great, but they haven't shown it yet, and I don't think it will happen.
The salmon farming industry likes to portray itself as the answer to the world's growing protein crisis. In fact, they are part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Recirculating aquaculture system provides a cleaner fish. They don't use chemicals, pesticides, and there's no threat to the wild salmon.
À Lunenburg, en Nouvelle-Écosse, les journalistes à la retraite Catherine Collins et Douglas France sont attablés dans une poissonnerie. Dans leur dernier livre, intitulé Salmon Wars, le couple dresse un portrait très critique de l'industrie derrière l'élevage des saumons en mer.
Our immediate concern is, as the fish farms are closed down in BC, that these multinational companies are going to turn their sights onto the Maritimes. There are already enough fish farms here. It could get much, much worse, and that is our immediate...
Pour Douglas France, co-récipiendaire d'un prix Pulitzer en 2002, ce travail d'enquête était nécessaire.
We value more than anything our independence because we are still recovering journalists, and we were taught forever to follow the facts. And in this book, we followed the facts. But what we came away from this book convinced of is that open net pen salmon farming is a threat to the environment, to our health, and it's a threat to all of our oceans. And open net pen salmon farms have to come out of the water no matter what kind of greenwashing you get from the industry.
They got to wake up, embrace the new technology, and accept the serious consequences of their practices and make changes.
En Nouvelle-Écosse, l'entreprise Sustainable Blue croit pouvoir relever ce défi avec son système d'aquaculture en recirculation.
We are culturing, growing Atlantic salmon entirely on land, inside buildings, in tanks. We have a technology that allows us not to have to discharge or bring in any new water. We can do that on 100% recirculation. We are basically separated from the ocean, and therefore we're not exposed to any disease vectors, which means we don't have to use antibiotics. And this gives us a model which we can replicate at scale now, both economically and environmentally, and have a very good tasting, healthy product without the environmental impact.
Le parcours demeure difficile. La compagnie a subi un bris d'équipement en 2023 qui a provoqué la mort de 100 000 saumons et des pertes estimées à 5 millions de dollars.
Fish farming is a challenging business, and product losses can occur. You learn a bit each time from that. You make things more resilient, more robust, and so forth going forward, which we've done. and get back on the saddle. So.
Autrefois un repas de luxe, le saumon est devenu un aliment de tous les jours. Ces dernières décennies, sa production n'a cessé de croître sur la planète pour atteindre 2 800 000 tonnes en 2024. Cela représente quelques 500 à 600 millions de saumons qu'il faut désormais penser à nourrir de façon plus durable.
So the answer is not to end aquaculture, but it's to end the kind of aquaculture that exploits pelagic fish like herring and sardines and anchovies, things that, as Catherine said, could be eaten and are eaten by other people.
Using alternative sources of protein allows us to leave at least some of those fish in the ocean in order to protect the future of our oceans for our children and grandchildren.
So we need to have viable alternatives. So we've embarked on a multi-year research project to find not only just alternative proteins and oils that are really good for salmon, but they don't involve ocean-based products. We're getting out of the ocean.
Et la solution passe peut-être par les insectes. Des mouches soldats noirs qu'on prévoit produire ici en Nouvelle-Écosse.
So here we are in our R&D space, which is currently where we're keeping our colony going while we're commissioning the facility. These are the larvae at about day 10. They've grown significantly. The insects are becoming a very, very good protein source that is being used in multiple agriculture, aquaculture avenues. We raise the insects, and then they are turned into a protein powder, and that powder becomes the ingredient that goes into either a dog kibble or a salmon pellet. Because of the fact that there are fewer forage fish out there, the industry has been forced to use other protein sources, and so they're adding soy and corn and other ingredients into the salmon diet. So right now in Canada, insect protein is allowed to be included at a 10% inclusion rate in salmonid diets, but with the data that we have, we think we can push for a higher inclusion rate.
As consumers, we have a responsibility to understand what we're putting on our plates. We have a responsibility to choose wisely for our own health and for the health of the environment.
The changes will come here in time, mostly driven out of social pressures. It's okay to close an industry for the right reasons, provided you can provide an alternative that sustains the jobs and the economic benefit to the region. And I think we can offer that.
Dans les Maritimes, l'industrie ne semble pas craindre une transition forcée comme celle qu'Ottawa a imposée en Colombie-Britannique.
Am I concerned about it here in Atlantic Canada? We're always watching what the government's going to do with oceans management and salmon farming and food production in Atlantic Canada. Right now, the provinces are the lead regulators. They're doing a really good job at that. Not long ago, all provinces signed on to a new memorandum of understanding that supported the continued development of ocean farming, salmon farming in Atlantic Canada. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, thankfully.
J'aimerais vous lire une histoire de la mer, l'histoire de Sonny, le saumon bleu.
Pour l'instant, l'appui des provinces semble acquis. Cette vidéo, qui fait la promotion de l'élevage des saumons en mer, a été produite par l'industrie et met en vedette l'ex-ministre conservatrice du Nouveau-Brunswick, responsable de l'aquaculture.
This industry is pushing back hard. They've been launching campaign after campaign to promote themselves as sustainable and naturally raised. It's not. It's the ultimate in greenwashing, and I hope that we'll see through that before it's too late.
Voici, les poissons sont devenus grands. Un nouveau bateau arrive pour les mettre en dedans. C'est la fin du récit de l'élevage du saumon. Nous avons suivi chaque étape, du petit œuf au grand poisson.